Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha TV. I am Parijat Kaul. In the current global economic distress, several world markets including Europe and America are facing rough weather. But there are many that have not only managed to evade the financial downturn but have also managed to stay on the path of growth. Apart from celebrated India and China, there are many in Latin America that are doing rather well. And now, all 33 countries in the region have come together to form a new group called CELAC, Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. CELAC now intends to engage with other world economies like India and China.
Europe continues to struggle with economic chaos, battling one financial crisis after another, and the United States of America too is staring at gloomier financial days ahead. But further to the south of the globe, Latin America is making long, sure-footed strides towards global trade and business ties. Latin American and Caribbean countries have formed several sub-regional groups to improve mutual trade and commerce bonds. But in a more recent development, the region has taken a bold step to approach other large world economies jointly. And on priority are the two growing economies, India and China. To engage with the two best performing economies, all 33 countries in the region have come together to form CELAC, or the Community of Latin American and Caribbean Countries. The goal is to give an impetus to trade and commerce with India.
Daniel, no. Se da por aprobado el Plan de Acción de Caracas 2012.
There are very large countries, small populations, but they have a lot of natural resources. As a result, there is a complementarity between the Indian need for fuel, food security and other raw materials and Latin America's need for service industry, technology and so on and so forth.
With an aim to spur the exchange process, the first India-CELAC dialogue was held in New Delhi recently. Both sides acknowledged the scope for mutual cooperation in economic and business activities.
It's a good time to to strengthen our relations with this new bond grouping from Latin America and Caribbean region. There is a high degree of complementarity between India and the LAC region.
India already has a long-standing trade relation with various countries in the region. Indian companies have already marked their presence in various fields ranging from pharmaceuticals to oil and gas exploration. At present, the Latin American region accounts for 4% of India's trade. From about $2.5 billion in 2001, two-way trade between India and Latin America rose to $25 billion in 2011. It includes $11.6 billion of India's exports to Latin America and imports worth $13.5 billion.
Whatever is being traded today is not at its full potential. So there can always be increase in the current items that are being traded. Fuel, raw materials, copper for instance, ethanol, soya oil, etc. from Latin America, which are large commodities which are being traded, can also be coming in larger volumes. We are getting these in significant volumes, but they can increase. Secondly, our own products like vehicles, two-wheelers, four-wheelers, three-wheelers, pharmaceuticals, textiles and so on can also increase in volume. There's that. The potential has not been exploited to the fullest.
The Football World Cup in 2014 and Olympics in the year 2016 are some of the biggest opportunities in the region. There is also the $270 billion investment made by Brazil in hydrocarbons that Indian companies can benefit from. There are business opportunities in the field of large industrial goods, oil and natural gas, infrastructure development and renewable energy among others. Indian companies as well are raring to go. Several Indian companies have already launched their aspirations in the region and many have established themselves in a big way. Oil and Natural Gas Corporation ONGC Videsh, Indian Oil Corporation and Oil India have acquired a 40% stake in a large Venezuelan oil field. Reliance too has developed a long-term partnership buying crude oil from Mexico, Venezuela, Ecuador and Brazil. Coming at a time like this, the India-CELAC dialogue can mark a new beginning in giving a fillip to the bilateral trade between India and the 33-country bloc.
I think the margins should be a little bit better than what they are in the Western world and North America. So it's worth the extra effort to try and go there and try and establish that presence there, especially as I think the competition there is currently not as much as it is in the established markets.
But you have two entities here that are very stable, very progressive, very democratic, and will definitely do business on terms that are fair and justiciable.
India too is looking to seize the opportunity, and the government has been pushing forward with its Look South policy. External Affairs Minister S.M. Krishna recently visited Cuba in a bid to improve trade ties with the Caribbean nation. His visit was followed by Jyotiraditya Scindia, Minister of State for Commerce and Industry, to 3 Latin American countries: Venezuela, Colombia and Cuba. India already has several bilateral trade treaties with many countries in the region. India has also signed a preferential trade agreement with Chile and Mercosur, a sub-regional trade group. But what industry would like to see come out of the India-CELAC dialogue is a comprehensive discussion on remittance mechanism and easy visa regime, among others.
If on a government-to-government basis we can find a mechanism or a way where the payment cycle can be reduced or made automatic in some way, I think it will go a long way to improve the business and trade between our countries. Similarly, I think also in Colombia there are some issues. I think visas, for example, could be another area where access to easy visa regime, which allows bona fide Indian businessmen to go long-term visas. They can go frequently and come back frequently. It will be much easier to establish trade and follow up on customers and visits.
Just as we started with Africa, with the African Union Summit mechanism, we can also talk to CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, about the possibility of a dialogue at that level to address macro level issues. And it's very useful. Of course, our bilateral relations and even our relations with regional organizations like the Mercosur Common Market will continue.
The India-CELAC dialogue looks at achieving a working mechanism between the 30-member bloc with New Delhi. In the meanwhile, there is a need for CELAC also to install a mechanism whereby its member countries can offer Indian companies a positive business environment.
They will follow their own agendas and they will strengthen their own agendas. But eventually, like the European Union, which also started with sub-regional organizations and still does not have all its members, for instance in the European Monetary Union or even in the Schengen for visas, they are also trying, Latin America and the Caribbean, to eventually amalgamate the entire region, that is the eventual aim, into one common area like the European Union.
There is a large Chinese presence in the region, and India's trade with Latin America is about 1/10 of what Beijing has already achieved. While acknowledging the competition, experts believe that the market is big enough for both rising Asian economies to exploit.
I don't think we should see China as an adversary or as an opponent. There's room enough for everyone. China has expanded its trade phenomenally with the US, and so have we. Similarly with Europe, similarly with Russia and others. So as a result, I think wherever there's a market, there is an opportunity.
Indian companies have been through that path before. The old days we used to compete against the US and then against Europe and then against Southeast Asia. Now it's China, and so it's something that we have to take in our stride. We have to learn to compete with them. We compete with them in other parts of the world. So why not in Latin America and South America?
Latin America and the Caribbean region has an estimated 4.3% GDP growth in 2011. The region is projected to grow at 3.7% through 2012. It is an opportunity for India to further its market diversification program. Latin America's disillusionment with financial crisis in Europe and an uncertain economic outlook in US, coupled with improved India-CELAC trade ties, may very well help New Delhi surpass the growth rate of China.
It is time for a break, but don't go away, because when we come back, we will have with us Mr. Alfredo Moreno, Foreign Minister of Chile. Chile currently holds the presidency of CELAC. Welcome back. We have with us Mr. Alfredo Moreno, Foreign Affairs Minister of Chile. Welcome to Rajya Sabha TV, Mr. Moreno.
Thank you.
Let me begin by asking you, Mr. Moreno, what is your take on the first India-CELAC dialogue?
Well, we are very enthusiastic. We have this new organization called CELAC, which is the first time in history that all the Latin American countries and all the Caribbean countries join together. And this is our first visit to a foreign country, and we have chosen India for that. And these first talks have been very useful for both sides.
Mr. Moreno, the dialogue being in very initial stages, what was the primary focus of the dialogue?
Well, as I told you, the CELAC organization is so new, just a year ago was formed. And so the first goal is to make the internal organization of CELAC. But then we have to move on to present it to other big countries and big regions. So in the case of India, for example, we have made a lot of agreement in terms of business. We will set up a business forum with the largest companies in the region, plus the largest Indian company. Then we are going to make a group to work in scientific and technological advances that you have and that we have in different fields. And also, of course, we will have political talks once a year, one time here, one time in the country where there is the presence of the CELAC, which it is changing year by year.
You must have had many interactions with the business community in India. What was their initial response, considering that Latin America is not a traditional market for India?
Well, what I'm trying to say to them is that if you look at China, trade is 10 times. And today, imports or exports from Latin America to India is just 4% of what we do. So there's a lot to do. And the opportunities are there. These are like India, countries that are growing faster than any other countries in the world. In Latin America, we have half the population of India, but 5 times the size of the land, of the geographical size of the region. And there you will have the largest reserves of minerals, oil, gas, agricultural land. So there is a lot that with the technologies and advances that Indian companies have that you can intend down there. In fact, there are some Indian companies that are already taking advantage of that. So in trade and in investment, a lot to do. We're just starting.
Mr. Moreno, Latin America is rich in natural resources, minerals, oil, and several large Indian corporates are already working there. Beyond that, do you see Indian companies entering other sectors like industrial sector also?
This region in Latin America, it is mostly exporting commodities. Oil, gas, copper, some food, which is, and I think that will keep that way for some time. Then it will go on as income per capita goes up, then it will move to a different level. But for the next few years, I think that will be the main export of these countries. And of course, there are the main sectors where the opportunities lie.
In your meetings with the business community here, did they mention any specific issues that they find discouraging in doing business in that region?
Here we're talking about 33 different countries, so it is not easy to talk about what's the situation in quite different economic models. In CELAC, we do not have the same rules in economic terms in every country. So if you want to go there, you have to find out which are the countries where you find that you're comfortable with, and you will find very different ones.
So within CELAC, are you working on a mechanism, internal mechanism on changing policies, trade policies, so that you can address Indian economy as a bloc, as you propose to do?
No, today within our continent there are some trading regions which are not CELAC but pieces of it. For example, the Mercosur, Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay, and very recently Venezuela. On the other hand, on the coast of the Pacific, you have Chile, Peru, Colombia, Mexico, which is the Pacific Alliance. And so there's different trading groups. CELAC today, just formed, it is not a common market, let's say.
Specifically talking about India, what is the approach that CELAC is going to take?
Well, as I told you before, one is the political dialogue. There is no other organization that joins all the countries. That's one. In second term, we try not to duplicate efforts. So let's say that we're working on connectivity, roads, railroads, electrical systems. Well, it is better to do it on a larger scale in CELAC than doing it piece by piece on the Mercosur, on the Pacific Alliance. So we're trying to take what all those smaller groups are doing and try to join into CELAC for that. So if you want to get in touch with all the region, then CELAC is the vehicle.
Are facilities like single point landing for goods and things like an easy visa regime being considered by CELAC nations?
No. The countries, all of them have different immigration policies. So you will need a visa or will not need a visa depending on the country. And each country delivers their own visa. And this is a very new organization. So we're not a trading bloc. And of course, we do not have this political alliance enough to have, for example, an immigration policy which, like the European Union, for example.
So it is not going to be like that. It is going to be.
We don't know if it's going to be like that. Today is not like that.
Can we expect any such facilities in future?
No, not today. Because as I told you before, the Latin American countries and Caribbean countries have very different development schemes and very different economic policies. So today it's very difficult to have a common market among all of them, because for that you have to have the same trade and import tariff, for example, and that's very difficult today because we look at the world in economic terms in a very different way. So what we have been doing is just to cooperate on all the things that we have an agreement, which is, as I told you before, connectivity, working on defense expenditure, working on getting in touch with the largest countries in the world or the largest economic regions. So, but on economic terms, the ones that think alike, then they try to make these economic unions, like Mercosur, like the Pacific Alliance, like the Andean Community of countries or whatever.
Some people feel that the language barrier and the distance from Latin America to India can be a dampener in doing business with the region. What is your take on that?
Well, I don't think that the language is a barrier. And in a way, of course, the distance is a barrier because there is a cost of transportation. But on the other hand, for some products, that's an advantage because when you're having one season, we're having just the opposite, for example. So, for example, for fruit production, that's something we can provide what you don't have in a certain season, and so you can have certain fruits, for example, all the year round. So there you got something which can be done. Also, India is in an industrial phase. And so it is consuming a lot of raw materials. So you will find in this region oil, gas, minerals, which are needed for the development of India. So as in any trading transaction, both sides can earn a lot.
A greater interaction between people from a commercial area and from social and cultural fields can probably work better towards improving relations and business environment also. Is something like that being considered by CELAC?
Exactly. On what we agreed with your Minister of Foreign Affairs, all of those issues are addressed. We will have a business forum where entrepreneurs will get in touch. They will figure out what are the good investments, what are the good businesses to do. And cultural ties will also be strengthened through the cultural ministries in each country. And the same is true for scientific and technological research.
It is time for a break, but when we return, there is more on business environment in Latin America. Welcome back. We are with Mr. Alfredo Moreno, Foreign Affairs Minister of Chile. The economies in Latin America are vibrant and growing, but each country may have its own priorities. So how is CELAC going to bring them together and approach India as a single bloc?
Well, the easiest way, which is try to work on the things that we have in common. And so each country can do the ones that we have differences. So, for example, economic policy within a country, that's an internal thing. So what we are worried is that what can we do together? And there is a lot that we can do together. As I told you before, for example, all the connectivity. We, in this continent, do not have, for example, good roads that go from the Atlantic to the Pacific. The US, for example, in North America, have railroads and good roads 100 years ago, because it is one country. They have the same natural obstacles to go through, and they did it 100 years before. We, because we are 33 countries, then we were not able to do that. So we need to repair that, to fix that.
We were talking earlier too about trade policies, difference between trade policies, and things like remittance delay. Is CELAC holding any internal dialogue within the members to approach and have a common policy in this area?
In immigration policies, I'm sure they will belong to the country level, but what is behind the immigration policies, which is getting a safer and a safe space for the population against delinquency and international crime and all that, and drug trafficking. Well, we will cooperate, of course. So, for example, one of the issues that we're working in is to exchange information about people, so that you know who are the guys that you need to put out of your frontiers. And so, at the end, I'm sure that many things will be done in common. But the immigration policy, let's say if you want foreigners to come in to help you in industry or whatever, well, countries differ on those.
There are other large collectives in the region, like Organization of American States. Do you think that can impact the prospects of CELAC in any way?
Well, we do not only have OAS, we also have UNASUR, which takes all the South American countries. We have SICA, which takes all the Central American countries, and we have CARICOM, which is the organization of all the Caribbean countries. So it depends on the number of countries that you are aggregating, and CELAC is not against any other organization, neither OAS or one of the other smaller regional groups. What you find here is that these are countries that are very similar in their cultural. Most of them have the same language, except Brazil and some of the Caribbean countries, and even Brazil, Portuguese and Spanish are very similar. The culture where they come, they're almost the same. So there is a lot in common that we have, so that we can work together easily.
Any multi-country organization will also have an impact on politics in the region. OAS, for example, is believed to be more towards US inclination. Now, do you think that CELAC is also an attempt to come out of American domination in that region?
No, there are some things that where the CELAC, once again, can be able to have a common stand. The rule to make decisions in CELAC is consensus. So at the end, what that brings to you is to do all the things that we have in common. We do not get involved on things that we differ. So, for example, on political issues, for example, we defend the right of Argentina for sovereignty over the Malvinas Island, for example. We are all against the embargo on Cuba. So there are some things that we all agree, but we do not agree, for example, on the Syria situation, for example. There are some countries in Latin America that look at the situation in a way, other ones in another way. So we don't issue statements on Syria, for example.
Do you see individual political aspirations of member countries coming in the way of CELAC realizing its full potential?
Well, this is kind of a process, you see. This is the first time that these countries have been able to join in an organization. So that's a big step. So do we have problems in the future? Yes, we will. But I think we have learned something which comes from the European experience, from some of the Asian Pacific experience. I just talked with your Minister of Foreign Affairs. He told me that he was going to go to Pakistan in September. So for me, looking from very far away, that was surprising. So when you look from far away, you don't see exactly what's happening. And what's happening in Latin America is that countries that do think very different are learning to work on the things that they agree on, and that they are learning to do the things that will benefit all of them. So that's the main change. Of course, there are some things that we will not be able today to do jointly.
There are very few markets that are actually performing in the world. You intend to engage with India and China both, and US and Europe are already active in Latin America. Do you see a bitter business rivalry happening there?
But there is always business rivalry. That's the law of the market. So we will all compete, and China and India and all the Latin American countries will compete. In Latin America, we have done all the economic mistakes that you can think or dream of. And I think we have learned also a lot. And if you see the Latin American countries today, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are countries that learn their lessons. And so there is not by chance that today Latin America is doing better. The economic policies are much better.
So what is the next step going to be, Mr. Moreno? There was talk of India-CELAC summit. Is it going to happen very soon, or it is going to take some time?
No, it will happen year by year. So next time will be in Latin America. And so each year, 1 year in India, 1 year down there. This has some history behind, because before CELAC, there was a smaller organization called the Rio Group, which was headed by Chile. And we had a long history of meeting with India and other countries at the UN Assembly every year. So that gave us the first step for what we are doing today.
Mr. Moreno, thank you very much for talking to Rajya Sabha TV.